So we have more nurses that are getting criminally charged and maybe going to jail. Unsure yet. All of this just came out this week. We have two nurses from South Carolina that are faced with criminal charges that are felonies of neglect, basically for residents of a nursing home. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Do we have all the details? No. But we will talk about what we do know, as well as things to keep in mind if you are practicing and you have a license, especially if you're a nurse and you want to keep your license because this might not go well for these people. And with how short staffing is, it is, we'll say alleged a lot and hope that we don't get into trouble. It is allegedly um, eh, something that your employer might be like throwing you under the bus for, right? Because they're getting in trouble and they're like, oh, we'll just push it off on you. Because it seems like the employer in this situation actually is the one that charged people. If you were here to hear about the Minnesota Nursing Association strike, I was too until literally 40 minutes ago when I logged in and realized that they called off the strike. So I had prepared all this stuff to talk about that. I'm going to make a short video of it. Basically, the Minnesota Nursing Association was going to do a strike. It was going to be 3 weeks long, 15,000 nurses. They've called it off because they've come to a sort of an agreement, which is great. Horrible if you have a YouTube channel and your whole video was going to be on that. And then at bedtime for your children, you have to come up with an entirely new topic. But we're here and we're fine. So, I thought we would introduce this case. Maybe it's something that we can follow a little bit along. We've covered a couple other legal cases, and I think they're always good just to let you know what to watch out for, because if you don't know, you might end up getting sued for things that very much be out of your control. And yes, Zoe, that is why the topic and the thumbnail changed, because I sat down and I was like, I am so prepared. I was so proud. Like I had this whole thing planned like yesterday, which is unheard of for me. And then I go in and check it and I'm like, okay, we're going to channel this. Will. We're going to say the show must go on. It's going to be okay. I am going to talk about the NHS in Europe, but that again requires looking into it. And I thought there was more. I kind of polled people on Instagram and there was more interest in this one versus that one. So I am going to cover that. They're having a huge nursing strike over there in England. So we will definitely talk about that for sure. But I was not going to be able to pull that together in literally 20 minutes. Like normally it takes me 20 minutes to make a thumbnail and I have to think of a whole topic, but we're here. It's going to be fine. All right. Let us find let's find our little thingy majiggy that tells me later that we're entering the topic. If you're here live, welcome. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. This is Late Night with Liz. And if you're watching on the replay, hello to you too. You can just pretend the comment section is the chat. It makes me giggle when I read them later. Appreciate you being here. Let me know where you're listening from. And if you've heard of this yet, I didn't hear about it till today. So here we are. Man, I had thought that I could time it in a way that when I came back, the article would already be up, but dang it, it's not. Also, MSA, thanks for becoming a channel member. I appreciate you. Make sure you get the notification for the Discord. So basically, if you become a channel member, I think it's like $2 is the lowest here. Basically, it just helps me do what I'm doing here, and you get to be part of the Discord community. And every now and then, I make other random content. But you have a Discord where we just like chat a lot about our animals and then vent. It's like therapy for those of us who can't afford it. And you get insight. You get like we vote on all sorts of stuff with this. So that's what we're doing. We'll talk about this topic, and then we'll do like a brief Q&A at the end. Because I don't think we're gonna have enough like we'll probably have some extra time at the end of this. This is going to be one of those where people who love to hate me are going to get annoyed because they're like, we don't have all the information. And you're right. We don't have all the information, but we can kind of hypothetical a little bit and just talk around it and discuss what might have gone on. And then when we have all the details, we'll know it. But this whole situation strikes me as a wee bit fishy, and we'll kind of go into why. Because as with all things in like long-term care, nursing home, this was a skilled nursing facility type of situation. We know the ratios of nurses in those are horrible, right? I think we've covered other cases where, and if you have worked in long-term care, let me know what the ratios are for your nurses there, for your techs, because it is pretty horrific a lot of times, like 40 patients to a nurse. We're talking 40, 50. Some people in the video I've done before of a different lawsuit in a nursing home were like 60 patients. So It's not as though you have a lot of time, right? If you work in a long-term care facility like this. I did look this particular one up and they have a lot of job openings. So I'm assuming, they're probably a little bit short-staffed. Anyway, here we are. Attorney General Alan Wilson announces the arrest of two upstate nurses. Upstate, I have a fun fact. I only thought upstate was like for New York. Oh no, friends. Apparently everyone has an upstate. It's from Northern South Carolina. I was very confused for a little while. I was like, why are New York nurses working in South Carolina? No, they're just from the top part of South Carolina. Liz, get your brain on straight. On charges of neglect for nursing home patients. This is in South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina. He were let's start here. Come on, brain. I'm glad I'm not the only one, Cam. I was like, how does this fit together? South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson announced that in his office's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. So those are going to be the people in the Medicaid who are going to investigate anything that is not adding up quite right? So they have these units that sounds intimidating. If Adrian's here, she has threatened us with those before. She's like, you don't want to get in trouble with the Medicaid fraud people. They take all your money. So frightening. They arrested Alyssa Page Morris, who is 22 years old and of Cowpens, South Carolina, and Heather Starr Gowan, who is 44-year-old of Gaffney, South Carolina, each on 2 charges of neglect of a vulnerable adult. So things get even worse. So you can get charged. This is a criminal charge. It's a felony, and we'll look up kind of exactly what it is later. But it is even worse because it's of an older adult, right? Or of a vulnerable adult. And anyone who is in a long-term care facility is considered a vulnerable adult because, they're needing help. Obviously, that's why they're there. They were both booked into jail December 5th, 2022. They have now been released at home. So they are in the stage where you've gotten out of jail and you are waiting to have the meeting where they're going to start the process of convicting you, like bringing your sentence up. A joint investigation by the Spartanburg Police Department and the what is this? The SCMFCU revealed that the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, revealed that between September 9th, 2022 and September 11th, 2022, while employed as licensed practical nurses at a skilled nursing facility in Spartanburg, both Morris and Gowan, the 2 nurses, are alleged to have knowingly and willfully failed to provide care necessary to maintain health and safety to 2 Magnolia Manor residents. So they're saying that they didn't provide care. The care, we will find out, is actually wound care. They were supposed to be providing wound care to these people, and they did not. We do not know. Again, this is where we're going to get into we're not going to dive deep into speculation land, but I don't know if they charted it, that they did it and they didn't actually do it. But they did not provide wound care to people and they got a little bit sicker. There's a few other articles we'll read after this that has slightly different, it kind of explains it a little bit more. But I think this is interesting because if you have, right, and I'm not saying I know everything, this could be something where they were, sure, maybe these people were they had a vendetta against these patients and they were like, I'm not going to do this. Whatever. I think it's more reasonable to that instead of knowing and willfully failing to do something, that they probably had 50 patients and didn't get to it because they were trying to just pass meds and give, I don't know, a beverage to 40 to 50 patients during their shift. And you have to kind of prioritize what is the most important here. And you just can't get to everything if you have 40 to 50 patients. Again, since we don't know the full situation, I'm just letting you know that in my mind is slightly more likely. Exactly, Montana Gal. You can't give meds to 50 patients and do wound care. Wound care is, so a lot of times patients in this is a skilled nursing facility. So this means that they are, it's a step above, a higher acuity level than if you are just in a nursing home. These people are usually going to require nursing skills, which is why you are in a skilled nursing facility. You probably have wounds. You're probably not up and walking around. These are people that got discharged from the hospital and they're not well enough to go home yet. And these are not going to be slap a Band-Aid on it wounds. First of all, this is going to be, you probably need 2 people, one to keep the person turned if it's a wound on their back. And then the wound dressing, having done many of these in my career as a nurse, it's going to take forever to get it cleaned and everything put nice and back. Even if it takes you 20 minutes, that's two people, 40 minutes, and it's going to take the two people 40 minutes, and you're still trying to keep everyone else like alive and well and not falling and running. I don't think that these people probably went into this and were like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to show up to work and I am not going to change Betty and Sue's dressings today. I think they said, I'm going to do as much as I can. And we're probably not going to get to everything. And then the facility probably found out about it, because I bet now we're, like I said, we're going into speculation land, and we're going to go back to what the article said, but we don't know a lot of information yet because nothing has been released. I'm assuming that since the Medicaid unit has been involved, I'm assuming these people got sick, right? They had a wound that then got worse because the dressing changes were not happening, because the nurses did not have the time to do them. The wound gets a little bit worse. Maybe the patients get sick, right? Or a family member complains, or they get an infection that is then going like septic, or they're getting sicker from their wound. And then Medicaid comes in, because Medicaid is paying for this hospital stay, right? They're paying for this skilled nursing facility. And they say, well, why are they getting worse? Have you been doing their dressing changes? And then the facility's like, oh, let's like look. And it comes out that no, they haven't been doing their dressing changes. Maybe maybe they were documented, maybe it wasn't documented. And then Medicaid, because Medicaid doesn't want to pay for things, is going to say, well, you didn't do your part. So you are on the line for that nursing home. We're not paying for their entire stay, because that's what Medicaid does. Is if anything happens in a hospital stay, in a nursing home stay, in a primary care visit that is an oopsie, like, oh, this happened, you stubbed your toe while you were inpatient, like you let your patient stub their toe, we're not paying for anything, because we could possibly say that everything is linked back to that stubbed toe. In this event, they would say, oh, well, you were in their care and you let their wound get worse. We're not paying for this entire visit. In which case, it was actually the article, the news article we'll look at in a second. It said that Magnolia Manor was the employer was the one to report these people and turn them in. So it sounds like, going deeper down I don't have proof for this, but this was kind of how it's looking rabbit hole, that CMS said, why is this happening? And then they looked at Magnolia Manor, and after saying, we're not paying for this, and Magnolia Manor said, I guess they didn't do it. And then Magnolia Manor reported them. So their employer reported them for not doing it. So that's good. That's awful. Rather than being like, oh, wow, we actually didn't give you the time you need to actually be able to do this. They did this. Specifically, the Medicaid investigator people charges that both defendants intentionally failed to change the victim's wound dressing, causing their wounds to increase in size, resulting in both victims suffering unnecessary harm and risk to their physical health. Which, yes, if you don't get your wound care done, it's going to be a risk to your physical health. But do I think that these nurses went in and said, you know what we're not going to do today? No, I don't. I think they probably were doing the best that they could at the time with what they had. And if it came down to, am I going to give you your blood pressure, like give everyone their medicine so that they don't like actively have awful things happen to them? Or am I going to have to not give you your dressing change? I think we're probably going to go with give meds. I would give meds first, right? That seems to make sense. During the time of the alleged misconduct, like you misbehaved there, little nursies. During the time of the alleged misconduct, the victims were classified as vulnerable adults under the South Carolina law based on their residence in a skilled nursing facility, because they were, that makes sense. Vulnerable adults are usually people who are medically or cognitively impaired. So you're not like up to your full self, either because you're sick or your cognitive status is just not allowing you could be easily taken advantage of if you are a child or if you are an older adult. So, and those crimes are charged in a more harsh way. The incident was reported to law enforcement by Magnolia Manor. The employer turned them in, who cooperated fully with investigators. Morris and Gowan will be prosecuted by the Attorney General's office. Neglect of a vulnerable adult is a felony, and upon conviction has a penalty of up to 5 years in prison. That doesn't mean they will serve the 5 years if they are convicted. Again, this has to go through a couple more steps. This has to go to them getting, assigned like lawyers, and then having to come and get the charges brought. And then it goes through the whole process of, are we going to take this all the way to trial, do all the things. And even if they are convicted, then it doesn't mean you'll get the full sentence. But still, you could. And I guarantee their nursing licenses are probably going to go away. Pursuant to federal regulations, the Medicaid investigator people have authority over Medicaid provider fraud, abuse and neglect of Medicaid beneficiary in any settings, and the abuse, neglect, exploitation of individuals in nursing homes. Attorney General Wilson stressed all defendants are presumed innocent until they're proven guilty in the court of law. So I guess that's good. But yikes. Let's see what some of your comments have to say. Because to me, that just seems like you're put in an impossible situation and you were trying to do the best that you possibly could. And there was just no way you were going to get to everything. We don't know what their other patients needed. Is it very sad? And this is not in any way to say that like this is these patients' fault. If that was my family member, I would be absolutely livid. But if you're not giving your like nurses the appropriate staff to be able to let them do what they're doing, then that is an impossible situation. And then to turn them in for doing that is ridiculous. So again, we don't know that that's the situation. Maybe they are evil. Who knows? They very well might be just evil meanies who wanted these poor people to be harmed. But something inside of me tells me that that's probably not the case. And it really rages me that their employer turned them in. Melanie Purvis said, I work in a nursing home and I'm a RN. And at nursing home, I take care of 34 at night with 2 aides. This is helpful, Melanie, but that is a lot. So imagine having to pass 34 people's meds. You have people who are unable to get up and go to the bathroom by themselves, probably for the most part, because you're in skilled nursing. You're supposed to be turning all of your patients every 2 hours, ideally, so they don't get bed sores. You're doing tube feedings. You are doing like making sure people are breathing fine, doing breathing treatments, doing wound care on all of these people, making sure you're putting on, the shoes that make sure they don't get foot drop, like all the things you have to be doing, as well as making sure people aren't falling, assessing the people to make sure they're not getting sicker, right? Because you want them to be getting better, not worse. And that requires you assessing them, generally, managing the shenanigans that inevitably happen because, there will always be shenanigans. 34 is a lot of people to be doing that on. That does not seem safe. So the job, Montana Gal says, so if the job is 50 patients, just walk away. Yeah. Michaela said, I used to work in nursing homes and the most I ever took was 32 as a CNA. As if 32 isn't a lot. The most I ever took was 32. You should get a trophy because 32, that's a lot. That's a lot. Shanika Griffith says, it's true. I work as an LPN and the ratio is 1 to 40. So perhaps before we start going and charging people criminally, which is pretty life ruining, right? Because also if you get charged with a felony for doing something, you go to work and your work doesn't provide an environment that is allowing you to be successful. And then you get charged with a felony. That's going to make a lot of things happen when you get a felony, right? Like it's really hard to find another job. Your nursing license that you worked really hard for is probably going to get taken away. It's going to be hard to get another one anywhere else because they're going to be like, oh, you have a felony neglect charge of neglect. Like that's no, thank you. We will go elsewhere. Yeah. Can't vote, all sorts of things. KM said running in circles with Q2 turns, that's turns every 2 hours, changing constantly. Oh yeah, because people are incontinent too. So they're going to the bathroom in their bed and they need to be changed, right? So like that's added another layer to what everything is happening. Oh, and you have to chart. Yeah, we forgot charting, feeding, preventing falls. Pretty much impossible without a team. And we don't know what their team was, but I'm willing to bet that it was probably not enough to be able to get all this done. Let us see. Michaela S. said, one time in a nursing, I worked in one CNA was the only person scheduled to take care of 26 patients. They were expected the CNA. Oh, good. Now we're, yikes. I know CNAs actually can give meds in long-term care if they take a certain class, but still, CNA to give meds, take care of their needs, and get them breakfast. Not a problem for 26 people all at once. That's good. That's good. Mo said, hello, everyone. I remember working in long-term care discussing this exact issue with other nurses when we were short. The facility is not going to get in trouble. Staff, they will, and they'll claim neglect. Sad. And now we're seeing that exact situation. Cam said, isn't any wound beyond stage 2? So wounds are staged when we see them. Stage 1 is it's just the top of the skin. It's pink. It might not blanch. Stage 2 is it is going down a little bit like into the next layer of the skin. Stage 3 is it is all the way down like to right above the like fat layer, and stage 4 is it's going down into bone or muscle. And the worse it is, technically, okay, I'm saying that if it's stage 2, it's supposed to be handled by wound care. I think in a perfect world, I think a lot of the times, at least how I've seen that happen with my own patients, is they have someone from maybe wound care that stops by once a week or once every 2 weeks and gives instructions of how to care for it, but they are not physically there to do the care, right? Oh, sorry, I bonked you. The hospital that I worked in, and that's in an outpatient setting, right? On an inpatient setting, maybe it's more frequent, but I know that in my hospital, when I was a nurse, I did dressing changes on stage 4s all the time, which was all the way down. Usually, people get pressure ulcers from laying in bed. So it's going to be on kind of like your butt bone, on your elbows, on your ankles, on your knees, places that hit a mattress. And all the time we had sacral butt bone pressure ulcers that were straight down, and we had to do it. So I'm willing to bet that most long-term care, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm willing to bet that in most long-term care facilities, you are not seeing wound care nurses or providers coming in and doing dressing changes on these patients, especially since you need them usually multiple times a day, 2 or 3 times a day, plus whenever they get soiled. And if it's like a sacral ulcer, which is the most common, which is why I talk about it a lot, it's in your brief area. So if you're incontinent, that's getting changed like constantly. But I would imagine that wound care might be recommending things, but not the ones actually coming in and doing all of the dressing changes. Yikes. Nurse Scott said, in this case, there's more than just what the nurses did. There's much more than just what the nurses did or didn't do. Exactly. There's a lot of nuance behind it. And hopefully they're going to be able to get a legal team that's going to be able to come and bring that in, and they'll hopefully have some legal nurse experts that they're going to be able to snag and be like, hey, this is highly unreasonable. But or again, maybe maybe these people are just like the worst and they were doing this. Yeah, Michaela. Wow. Way to save your own ass, Magnolia Manor. Exactly. Real nice. Real nice. Just being like, oh, well, yeah, well, these are the people who were in charge. So why don't you sue them? That's real nice. Will C says, totally unrelated, but I want to be the person that comes up with the names for these facilities. For real. For real. That's good. We need a little levity. MSA says, I know God want to get away from this. I'm stuck trying to figure out how it happened, wondering if they charted what they did or just didn't go to them, or were they the end of the alphabet? So like when you're going down the list, that's a good question. I was and it doesn't, I guess it matters in a sense of like maybe Medicaid was annoyed about more of a fraud thing, like if they charted that they did do the dressing change or they didn't. But this brings up a good point of our first takeaway from this. Okay. If you guys are ever working in any setting, right? And you don't have enough resources to get a job done, document why. Okay. And don't make up that you could actually do the dressing change, right? So in this case, if let's say they just had too many patients and they couldn't get to it, do not assume that this employer of yours, like this place, is going to cover for you. Document why you, like, I could not, unable to perform dressing change. What is the status of the dressing? Is it soiled? Is it, is there fluid seeping through? Does it look like it? Just give it a brief description of what is happening here and then why. And your employer very well may fire you for that, to be totally honest. I have worked, I've been in situations where I was told to document things that didn't necessarily happen yet, because if we didn't, then so like for example, I worked on a surgical unit where people had, if they had certain, if you had a sternotomy, so your chest was open, you had to have a surgical bath, wipe down with these like wipes every 24 hours. And sometimes you would get in situations where you were running a code and the 24 hours lapsed because you were going to go into that baby's room and you were going to give them a wipe down when you fed them their 3 a.m. bottle. But then at 2:30, the patient's neighbor decided that they were going to get really, really sick. You were in there doing a rapid response trying to save this kid's life. And then they coded in the morning, and all of a sudden, day shift, the manager shows up, and the first thing they do is they beeline to you and they say, you need to go right now and make sure that this is charted for that, like that you did this bath. I'm like, I didn't do the bath. I was coding my kid. And they were like, well, it needs to be charted because otherwise it flags in the system that this is like, we missed this quality metric. And I promise you that happens everywhere. So I don't know if the hospital or the long-term care facility would have gotten them in trouble, I'm sure, like, or fired them if they didn't document it, because obviously this place wants it to look like the dressing changes were done. Otherwise, Medicaid is going to look at it and be like, why aren't you performing the required care for these patients? Or if they just didn't document it and they said, well, there you go, you definitely didn't do it, so now it's on you. But for you, document why, because if it goes to something like court like this, yes, your employer may fire you for not falling in line and documenting it, but your license is your most precious thing in this situation, right? Because you need to be able to get another job, and you aren't going to be able to get another job if you go to jail, right? So even if you're worried about retaliation from your employer, all you can do is document, honestly, I didn't have time to do this. I had this many patients. I have not had any time. This is the status of it. And moving on, it could save your nursing license, right? Because if it gets taken to court, right, it's not going to look good for Magnolia Manor if one of them had charted that, hey, I was also giving meds and doing X, Y, and Z on all of my 50 patients. This was the situation. I wanted to do it. I was aware. It wasn't willful and neglect, whatever. What did they call it? They said it was, I hated how they phrased it. Abuse and neglect, willfully failed. I wasn't willfully failing to provide necessary care. I was just trying to get caught up like get stuff done, right? So always document, always cover your butt in that way. And yeah, please do that. Please, please. Nurse Scott said, how shitty is it for the NH to set you up, nursing home to set you up for failure and then report you for failing? That is just low. Yep. 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 So document, because I think the more tense things get in terms of everywhere in healthcare is short staffed, Medicaid is going to be on top of this, seeing there like more and more errors are going to happen, right? Patients are going to fall. People are not going to get their dressing changes. They're going to get sicker. Medicaid is going to be on top of that. Medicaid's usually more investigation-y than other insurance companies. They're going to be looking into this type of junk. And if you think your hospital is always going to stick their neck out and be like, you know what, we're right. Melody was unable to change that dressing, but she had like 50 billion patients. So, come at us because we failed to staff it correctly. Don't come at them. If you think that's what's happening, I don't think we live in the same world. Brianna Shaw said, this is another example of why we have to stand up for ourselves and unsafe staffing ratios. Yes. Yes, indeed. I did try to look up what the staffing ratios in South Carolina were, but I did not have time. I did a quick Google search and nothing came up. And I was like, well, here we go. We're riding on this one. I'm going to try to follow this case. So we will see how it goes. So second opinion, write that down. And once we find out more, again, like I said, I have kind of come up with a lot of situations within this. We can just call it an example. If it ends up being that they were just evil nurses who did willfully neglect care on purpose because they just didn't want to, then we'll have a different conversation. But again, interesting case study of what could happen and is happening. The facilities are never going to have your back. They absolutely will throw you under the bus. Yes. Yes, indeed. Imagine how different things would be, if we just had safe staffing, because if you had enough people to do the job, then that would be here. Which kind of brings us back to what we were going to originally talk about, which was safe staffing things, which was causing the strike. But they seem to have given them, I haven't seen, I'll do like a mini video on the Minnesota Nursing Association, what they gave them. It looks like they gave them better salaries. I don't know if they met them in the middle in terms of like patient safety. We'll have to find out. Elizabeth Breyer said, I've nursed at nursing homes, and neglect is baked into the system. One nurse for 98 human beings when the other nurse doesn't show up and no one covers for her. Yeah. So, how are you supposed to make that happen? KM said, can you imagine if a daycare had a ratio of 1 to 50? Exactly. People would be outraged and not charging the individual employees. Exactly. Exactly. But we don't really care about our older people or our sick people in this country. So only when they're very, very tiny. And then we rapidly forget about them. Rapidly. Nurse RND said, at my skilled nursing facility, there was one RN, two LVNs, and 3 to 4 CNAs for 40 plus, but I'm in California. Once again, California. You and Scott, the dreamland of healthcare, where you have ratios. I don't know how you got them, but yikes. Salu Rios Bunny said, Liz, Sanford Health, a rural healthcare in South Dakota, is planning to merge with Health Fairview, Health Fairview, several diverse hospitals in Minnesota, with Bill Gesson remaining as CEO. Can you please host a video on this? If they misbehave, I will. If they do anything that's misbehaving. Yeah, Mr. Midwife. And then you wonder why we strike. And then they phrase it like, oh, these stupid nurses are just so lazy. They don't want to work, Please. All you have to do is pass meds on like 40 people and you complain. Come on now. Well, get in line. And this is a calling. If you can't handle it, sit down. It's kind of the treatment that we get. MSA said, right, the younger nurse has to be a newbie. Yeah, that really stinks. She's 22, I think. I mean, then the other one, like, isn't like, it just stinks for both of them. But yeah, the 22-year-old, like, literally probably just graduated from school, first nursing job, and bam, like, probably didn't even know any better. I don't know how long Heather, the 44-year-old, had been a nurse, but I mean, either way, it doesn't, like, so stupid. Kimberly, yes, we changed video topics. We had a bit of they changed on us. They resolved their problems. And I was like, this will not be a very good video if we just say, well, they were going to strike and then they didn't. Annie Val said management. Oh, we're talking about something else. Yes, I was a rehab. MSA said, yes, I was a rehab inpatient nurse and was trained to change and stage. What does change and stage mean? Please tell us. That sounds bad. I'm assuming, okay. Change and stage. I got you. Change the dressing and stage the wound. I got you. Took me a second. I was thinking like you were trained to like make everything look nice. Like if people came in and were like investigating, but no, change the dressing and stage the wound. That's something that like, I thought most people, we usually did. I mean, I certainly did that in the hospital. Let me see. Roar Dino said, oh, I'm so happy to see wound care. I'll twirl them and buy you lunch. Yeah, wound care is wonderful. When wound care came by, you were so thrilled. Michaela S. said, you're right, Liz. Wound care nurses usually come in once a week for monitor if we're lucky, and then they'll come in twice a week. Okay. That's kind of what, when I worked in primary care as a nurse practitioner, that was what was relayed to me from my patients that were in skilled nursing facilities. I would have people that would go out and the wound person would like then message me to kind of keep me up to date, or like I could see what their care was. So then when they transitioned outpatient, I could pick it up, but they were certainly not there every day. They were maybe there once a week. Michaela said, I'm not realizing how privileged I am to work in the clinic with providers and wound nurses being right there. Yeah. And it depends on your facility too. I'm sure there are skilled nursing facilities where they probably have a wound team that's always there. But hey, Montana Gal says, so is Medicaid suing the nurse or the company suing the nurse? So this is a criminal charge, and in criminal charges, the state sues you. What happened was Medicaid, the people paying the insurance company, right? Medicaid came out and said, this patient is getting worse. Why? They came in to investigate it. And they found that through records or through, looking at how the wound got worse, that while the patient was at the nursing home, the wound got worse. I'm assuming they pulled records and said, oh, like these dressing changes were not done. So at that point, Medicaid would go to the nursing home and say, we are not paying you for this visit, this entire stay that this patient has had. We are not paying for it. I'm assuming that's what happens because that's what they always do. Hospital stays, outpatient stays. They say, we're not paying you because this got worse, or you failed to do something which then caused more harm to the patient. And then in response to that, the Magnolia Manor, the nursing facility, then reported the nurses to the city, like to the DA's office for neglect. So they basically said, we're getting, we lost all this money from our insurance thing. And rather than taking it as like an internal, like, hey, maybe we should improve ratios or figure out a different way to actually be able to make this so that our nursing care is better, they went and they turned them in. Basically, they made a report, and then someone at the attorney general's office was like, oh yeah, we'll pick up that case and we'll charge it. So that's how that happened. So they're being charged by the state, but they were reported by their employer. So that could have been handled just within the facility, right? The employer did not need to report them. They could have said, oh, this didn't happen. This is bad. Let's make a policy change around it, or let's hire more people so that this never happens again. But instead they said, we'll just report you for a crime. MSA said, does South Carolina even have ratios? A lot of states don't. They probably don't. Pennsylvania doesn't have ratios. That's where I live. Jendo said, where in South Carolina? I live here. This was in what county? It was in the top part, hence upstate. Let me see what the town was. Spartanburg County Detention Center, if that means anything to you. Montana Gal said, safe staffing remains a major problem at my hospital. There's nurses to stay home, increase nurse-patient ratios. So the company makes more money, and then they tell their public that there are no nurses. Yeah. So you tell your nurses, hey, don't come in. It's fine. We've seen, we've seen that you can do this with less. And then bad things happen. And they're like, well, we can't find nurses. You're like, well, you told us to go home, or you won't treat us decently. MSA says California is amazing. I fully get the measure of California working after 10 years working elsewhere. Yeah, California, if you work in healthcare, sounds lovely. It is just so stinking expensive. Elizabeth Prior says, what's the best course of action to change the system? I don't know. Nursing has completely radicalized me into being against capitalism. Yes, me too. I was a different human 10 years ago when I went into nursing. Very different human. Now I've like 180'd. I'm like, we need to change we need socialized medicine. We need to take care of people. This is not good. A course of action would be writing to like your legislators and letting them know that you want to implement, you think they should, come up with a bill, do something like that to implement safe ratios, so that it's like California, where there are state mandated ratios where they say, hey, you can't have 50 patients in a skilled nursing facility. That's not okay. And then just talking about it, making the public generally aware, which is why we rant on the internet like this, so that other people can get just as mad like me that all of this is happening, because the general public has no idea, so they don't care. Right? They're just like, oh, well, they're angry at nursing homes. They're like, oh, well, people at nursing homes don't care. They have no idea that all of this is happening, and that the nurses probably didn't do this willfully, right? I'm sure this story is getting spread, and there's a lot of people who are like, oh my gosh, I had a horrible nurse when my grandma was admitted to one of these too. She was just like the meanest. Not like, oh, maybe she was like grumpy and probably not the nicest, because she's been single-handedly medicating, taking care of, and keeping alive 50 people for like ever and ever. And that kind of grates on your soul just a little bit. So, becoming a really dull person at a party where people are like, how are you? And you're like, allow me to tell you what I learned about this week. Did you know nurses are getting criminally charged for not having the resources they need at work? And everyone will love you. It's a great way to make friends. And that's what I recommend we do about it. Michaela said, it's amazing how much skilled nursing facility management becomes helpful when they find out that the Medicare or Medicaid is coming by for their yearly survey. Nurses and CNAs in long-term care know what I'm talking about. This happens in hospitals too. So what happens here is every now and then people will come in and they will evaluate your facility. So Medicare or Medicaid will come in to, these nursing facilities, and magically you're staffed well. Everything, you have all the supplies you need. Everything you've been asking for happens for this 1 week, right? Because they usually give you like a week that they'll be there. Same thing happens in hospitals with the Joint Commission. The Joint Commission is they evaluate things and then kind of like see if it's up to quality standards as set by Medicaid. So they're kind of the people who do it for the hospitals. Magically, the week that, you could have been drowning for weeks in your hospital with staffing, not enough people, you have not been able to get the resources that you need, you don't have anything, and then all of a sudden, um they're coming around. The Joint Commission is coming. JCO's here. And on JCO week, you have plenty of staff. In fact, all of a sudden, you have something called a resource nurse that you've never even heard of, who is an extra nurse who's just floating around your magical assignment that you've never had this few patients and this safe of a week. Everything you need is there. Your managers are like happy and complimenting you, which has never happened in your life. Maybe they've learned your name for the first time in 5 years since working there. And yeah, one thing that you can do, friends, is if JCO is coming around, be honest. Let them know, be like, this is interesting. This is very nicely staffed, but it's never been like this. Okay. Because really, like, they are very intimidating and you're coached to give certain answers when JCO comes around for like safety reasons. But don't give them the coached answers. I was not allowed when JCO was around because I gave them a bad answer once. And I was in a union hospital, so I didn't get fired, but I was never scheduled. I was only scheduled on night shift. Well, I always worked nights, but I was not scheduled on a night when JCO was going to be in the building in the morning because I was very honest and they didn't like that. So go be a troublemaker. Be honest to JCO and be like, yeah, well, actually, we normally have way more patients. We never have the supplies that we need, and this is not reality. Let them know. Nurse Hill says, I'm in South Carolina, and yes, for ratios, but it's not enforced. Expected, but not enforced. So, like a recommendation. That's nice. That's useless. Mr. Midwife said the nursing home probably reported the nurses to avoid cover up and some other pile of poo. Exactly. Diversion. Oh, let's blame these people. Let's not have any more on ourselves. Sweet Caramel Smile says, I'm a wound nurse at my hospital and we are the only ones that stage. This is interesting. We see patients as we are available to. Most of the time, we can't get the nurses to help roll the patients for us. That's difficult if your patient is larger and or just can't roll. A lot of times people are, we had people all the time that were 500 pounds. You're not going to be able to roll 500-pound people over by yourself. Like, you need help. Oh yeah, that really makes it a nurse want to run to their 300-pound patient. Yeah, exactly. That makes it very difficult. But again, we don't have help. That's cool. My hospital, we had a wound team and they came around once a month and they staged things, but obviously you had to stage it in between because once a month is not quite as helpful. I don't necessarily know the point of that, why they did that, but I'm sure it was a magnet thing where they're like, you have to have a wound team that comes by, and they're like, yeah, like once a month, it's fine. Elizabeth says, I live and work in California. The nursing homes and hospitals work around staffing ratios. Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they try to do things to get away with it. I'm very, very sure. Nurse Hill said, but I'm still confused as to why there wasn't another provider that would have assessed these patients over the course of them getting worse and delegated interventions before reporting. I think it happened over like 2 days. So it would have been like a weekend probably, right? I don't think it was over a very long time. I think it was between the 9th and the 11th of September. So it wasn't, most of the time you don't even have a provider that's in there. And if no one had time to be changing the dressing, maybe they didn't even know it was worse. Maybe it was like a family member that came in and noticed it, or or maybe a provider did at that point come in and see them. But these patients are not getting seen, I'm assuming, daily by a nurse practitioner, a PA, or a physician. Usually it's much rarer than that. M said, why is the state announcing their arrival? I don't know how they know these things, but they usually do. They usually do somehow find out about how all of this is going down. So that is what we have there. Here are some other news articles on it. I will put all of the articles that I found in the description if you want to look at it, and then let me know if you want to like kind of follow it. It just makes me so mad, like that this is even what we're looking at. Upstate nurses arrested for allegedly failing to provide care for 2 nursing home residents. Yeah, a mess. I also saw on one of these, it was like maybe it's on the other one. That the hospital, the one where we talked about the nurse that chopped the person's foot off, she went to court today for her first hearing. I was like, ooh, yikers. It's gonna be interesting. I don't know how you're gonna argue your way out of that one. Is it this one? No, I'll have to find it. But it was the lady who cut the person's foot off so that she could taxidermy it also at a nursing home. She's getting investigated. Her time is here. Why it takes, what was this question? Why announce that the hospital, why isn't it, clarify, why isn't it a surprise when the hospital comes? I don't know. I don't make those rules. I just always knew that even though it was supposed to be a surprise when Jayco or people like that were coming, it never was. So I don't know how people know. If you guys know how people know, then do let us know. But everyone always seemed to have an idea of a window. We didn't even always necessarily know. Sometimes we knew the day that they were going to be coming in from and evaluating like the quality of everything. I think it's supposed to be a surprise, but it never was. At least from the many, many emails that we got saying, hey, Joint Commission is going to be here. Remember, you don't drink water. Everything you have to know the temperature. That was what I got in trouble for. I didn't know the temperature. Someone came up, like a Joint Commission person came up to me. I have just worked a 12.5-hour shift. I am tired in the morning. And this Joint Commission person was like, I need you to come here and tell me what's wrong with this fridge. And I was like, I didn't even know they were from the Joint Commission because I don't really read my email. I know you're shocked. And I was like, I can't tell you anything about the fridge. I'm like, oh, like, are you a parent or do you need something from the fridge? I will unlock it for you. Probably shouldn't just offer to unlock things immediately either, but hey, everything's fine. And they're like, no, like I'm here from this, blah, blah, blah. And your fridge temperature is out of zone. I was literally like, oh, that sucks. And you see, like, I remember looking out of the corner of my eye and like my supervisor, who I now like was standing there and I saw her, like her eyes get like ginormous. The person was like, what temperature should the fridge be? I'm like, I don't know. That doesn't, I was like, I have absolutely no idea. I was like, that sounds like they're like, well, what would you do about this? I was like, I would probably nothing, which was also not the answer that they wanted, which they then told me. They were like, you wouldn't do anything? I was like, I'm sure I would tell the clerk up front and maybe they would know. But I was not allowed to be in the building after that event. Didn't go very well. I think they asked me like one other thing and I failed miserably. They're like, do you even know what some other kitchen thing expiration? And I was like, no. No, I think it was like, how long does this take to expire? And I was like, it's the least of my worries, my dude. Least of my worries. So that's also a method that you can employ, is just be like kind of the worst. It does teeter on getting fired though. So if you don't work in a union hospital, you need to be sure. Said, having worked in dietary, that sounds like a dietary thing. Ask them. There you go. If you ever get asked about the fridge, be like, hey, I would definitely ask dietary. Definitely wouldn't just, oh my gosh, the fridge temps. Yeah. Who cares? They did. They really cared. I think that year might have even been the year, obviously not just for my answer, but like we had to come back and get reevaluated. There were things we needed to fix. They give you like ultimatums. They're like, if you don't fix this, Medicaid will not pay you anything, which is a lot of money when you're in a hospital. I'm sure it wasn't just because of me and my sassiness about fridge temps, but I will take the credit. Zoe says, I feel like at least in hospitals, at least vaguely when Jayco comes, but not a specific time though. Yeah. I don't know how they know. I don't know. Maybe they're like spidey senses. Maybe that's a whole like thing where people, like some people in Jayco, like, well, you can pay them to give you a heads up so that you can make everything look good. We'll see. Mariana said, wait, so these people are not quality control for patients, but for hospital equipment? Mostly, yes. So they're technically there for patient safety, And like the fridge is a patient safety issue, but mostly they're looking for like if you have a water bottle at a desk, like at a nursing station, you are not allowed to show that you are a human that hydrates because you can't have water bottles. That is a huge infection risk. You never know how your saliva could get from that straw and hop onto, I don't even know, a meal cart that was going by, which would then hop onto someone's mouth, a patient that was eating. Um, you never know how that will happen. They get really angry about that. They get really angry about just weird, stupid stuff that no one else cares about. But those were the big ones that I remember. Griff said, I quit nursing in September, understaffed and not adequate supplies at a nursing home. Yeah, just guard your license if you work at a nursing home, friends. It is not worth it. You need your license to get jobs other places. Or more importantly, you don't want to go to jail because apparently we're criminally charging nurses now. Seems like a new trend that we didn't necessarily used to do. Usually when something like this, I guess I'll finish your comment and then I'll go on my tangent. Finished my shift and told my boss I was never coming back. Worked at a grocery store until I got hired in an office. I very much hope you are happier now. I relate to that. I relate to that. I often questioned why I quit bartending. And then I got a job in peds and life was a lot better. I did enjoy my peds nursing job, but when I worked med surg, I was like, why did I stop working as a bartender and a waitress? That was a lot more fun than this. But yes, it is not worth your license. It is not worth getting criminally charged. Before this, and I don't know if this is just because we weren't covering it, like it wasn't TikTok and all of that, like wasn't covering it as much. You would usually get charged by your like nursing board, and maybe like a civil offense or something. But criminal charges seem to be popping up a lot recently, which is a bigger deal because like jail and felonies and that is like sticks with you quite a bit. Mr. Midwife says, we're making a surprise visit next Monday. Exactly. Act surprised, hide your lizzes, and be on your best behavior. Oh, good. So much happier now. Not stressed. Haven't cried in months. I was so scared of prosecution and losing my license. Yes. And always know, friends, that it's okay to pivot and it's okay to change. It's okay to take a break. It is okay to, if this is not working for right now, to just pause and be like, I need to reevaluate. I think we all know I'm in a I need to reevaluate phase. Although the other day I did have like the tiniest inkling of like, could I go and work 1 or 2 days a week in primary care again? Could I do it? Could I do it? And then the rational side was like, not yet. Calm down, Liz. Calm down. But every now and then I miss like interacting with patients and I just like, I miss that. But I don't know. We're still pivoting. We're still unsure. We're still. Mr. Midwife says, I love this internet exposure with these situations. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Hear, hear. Yes. Which is why we're talking about this on the YouTube. So if you want other people to get mad about it, please share it. Like the video. That tells the YouTube gods that you enjoy this content and you want other people to see it. And doing all the other thing, comments, whatever. That all gives the internet gods the exposure. It it tells it that you like it and it maybe will send it to other people. We need an NP at our office, Liz. I don't know if I can't ever move again. So that would be like a really long commute. Like a really long commute. But I did update my I like started to look at like updating my resume and just making sure it looked fine in case I was feeling irrational one day and wanted to go in. But then I also figured it wouldn't be fair to this poor office because I would walk in like acting as if they need me so badly and they probably don't. And I would be like, hey, here's the deal. Like you would have the honor and the privilege of having me maybe one day a week, maybe two. Maybe two. I'm going to have a lot of time off too. I have other weird things going on in my life. For the honor of that, here are my demands. I need this much admin time, even though I only work 2 days a week. I will not see more than this many patients. Like going in with all time demands. I was like, people are going to be like, who do you think you are? And no. So I have not started that. I've talked myself back off of that ledge, but one day One day I'm sure I'll have a story of how I walked in and the person was like, "Who do you think you are?" and goodbye. How dare you? Uh, Zoe Bent says, I feel like Redonda in her case started a wave in screwed up movements of nurses being penalized for mistakes that are ultimately due to the facility not offering nurses adequate resources. That was definitely the first one I was exposed to that got it caught on. I don't know if it was happening before that, but that definitely was the one of the first ones that got a lot of media attention from a criminal aspect, right? But there's been a lot of other ones, right? So we'll see. Elizabeth Prayer says, I got into private nursing for $100 an hour. Dang. I don't plan to stay forever in it because I know I can do a greater good somewhere else, but maybe I'll volunteer in nursing work. Just not sure yet. Dang. $100 an hour. Yeah, just like do that for a while. That would be hard to leave. That's what I would love to do is volunteer. It's this paycheck of volunteering that I haven't I can't quite I can't quite swing. Maybe in like, I don't know, 20 years. I don't know. Yeah, that it's very difficult. It's impossible right now because daycare being what, $2,500 a month, 2000 something. All of our money goes to daycare. So certainly not now. And then not after that. So maybe if I become YouTube famous one day, I'll be able to volunteer at like a free clinic and that will make my soul happy. Michaela said, I came across a news article the other day that a law in California that NPs might be, I don't think this is complete. Here, Mr. Midwife says, volunteer, we'll double your salary every 6 months. 0 to 0 to 0. Exactly. So yeah. So that was our general little rundown of that. What a little hot mess that is. Let me know if you want to follow up on it and we'll keep tabs on it, or if it was just a fun thing to talk about once and we can never talk about it again. Also, let me know if I should do a recap of the Minnesota Nursing Association and their strike. I have a lot of information on it. I had a great thumbnail, and now it's done because which I'm glad. I'm really glad that going on strike is never anyone's goal. It is not, they like to villainize nurses and be like, oh, you're going on strike. You don't care about patients. The goal, nurses don't want to not go to work and have patients. They don't want to leave them high and dry. But if you're in a union, kind of a strike is your weapon. That's what you can use. And here it worked, that hospitals then all of a sudden were like, whoa. I think we're going to be able to come in and figure something out here. Yeah. So that's where we are. If you guys have any general questions, we can do like a mini, like just Q&A chit chat for a second. And if not, we can go to bed. I can go play. I just need you all to know, first of all, how dedicated it is that I'm here, because Disney Dreamlight Valley, if you play that, came out with an update today. And if you play that, like, it's a video game on my Switch, and it's sitting right. Oh, I just bonked you. I'm so sorry. It's sitting right here. And there's whole new lands. There's all new characters. There's new outfits. There's new paths. And I was like, I want to do that. I did not do that. I came and we did this live and it was fun and I'm glad. But also, I did have a moment where I was like, we could cancel. And then that voice got even louder when I realized my topic was no longer a topic that we could talk about. And I was like, we could just cancel, but we're here. I like our Tuesdays. I like hanging out, but just know that's how important you are to me, that I didn't play Disney Dreamlight Valley and we're here. Salubrious Money said, yes, I was really hoping to hear more details about the nurse strike, even if it's resolved. Cool. Well, if other people are also interested in it, then we can, maybe I'll do like a little quick video on it and it won't be like a live. We'll do a premiere or something for it, but it doesn't have to be like a whole thing. We can just go over what it was, kind of what, where we were, how it was. I keep going to get my glasses adjusted and they're just heavy. So they fall on my nose, and now they're expensive and I'm stuck. So I know it's annoying. I'm annoyed by it. I can't wear contacts because a patient flung poop in my eyeball when I was a nurse. So to everyone who's like, oh my gosh, stop adjusting your glasses, just get contacts. That's why I can't get contacts. I chose a pair of glasses that I thought were cute and they're way too heavy. And my nose doesn't have like a bump right there. The bump is in a weird spot. So if I rest it on my bump, then I'm like this. And I need my nose bump to be higher. So there's a lot of anatomy problems going on here. And it slides down my face. So that's where we are. That's why we're here. Mariana Cabrera says, I know you work with Lecterio, but do NP professors educated get compensated well? No. That's why there's not enough of them. Yeah, that pretty much sums that up. Maybe they get paid better some places, but in most places, no. That's why, and that's a huge issue too with like all of healthcare education, is you don't have enough people to teach because they get paid like really crappy and they don't want to give you like a full-time position with all the benefits and give you the tenure and all the stuff. And that's where we are. It gives me a librarian look. It certainly does when it's down here on my nose bump. I'm like, hello, hello, everyone. And then I try to like not wear them because it really annoys me. And then I run into things or my children make fun of me because they're like, look, mom. And I pretend I can see what it is. And I can't. But now they're old enough to catch on. And they're like, what's it say, mom? Or what is it? And I guess, and they're like, no. You need to go put your glasses on. $62,000 a year for NP professors in Colorado. That's laughable. I'm sorry. That's laughable, especially since nurse practitioners in Colorado probably make like 130 easy. So double the salary. That is disrespectful, especially when the students are paying so much tuition and you literally like this. What do they do with it? Right? Like, what does the school do with that money? Well, that's like 2 people's tuition annually. There's a lot more than 2 people in the class. So, what is happening there? You should see an optometrist or a plastic surgeon. About my nose bump? I don't care. I'm never going to, I won't get plastic surgery on principle. I'm weirdly personally against it. I don't care what you do. You do you, but I feel like it adds to the, I don't want to. I've thought about getting one for my nose bump because my nose bump annoys me. And then I had babies and I was like, no, I need them to just see that I'm fine with how I am and they're perfect how they are. And I need to walk that walk so they can do whatever. I don't care who cares? I don't care. I'm not against plastic surgery and get general, but I have a weird thing against it for me. So I won't fix my nose bump. And the optometrist is the one who gave me these glasses that fall off my face. I always, if you've been here at all for 5 years, how long I've been doing this, my glasses have always done this because my nose, I wish I could like show it better. My nose is the wrong shape for glasses, which is very unfortunate. And I also have a very fat head and I get migraines if my sides of my head are pinched. So I'm I don't even know what I would do. Wear goggles, maybe that would help. So I don't even know, but I'm sorry if it's annoying. I understand. I swear off contacts forever. Sometimes I wear dailies, but I got septal cellulitis on my optic I got cellulitis on the back of my eyeball basically and on my optic nerve. And I got to have IV antibiotics for a while. Did I get workers' comp? No, because they said maybe that happened. Maybe you got it somewhere else. I'm like, I'm almost positive I got it when that patient put poop in my eyeball. They were like, but you can't prove that. So did I get workers' comp? No. But they told me to be very cautious because since I have damage on that eyeball, like if I ever get an infection again, which isn't like overly likely, but if I ever got a severe eye infection, which you're more prone to eyeball infections if you wear contacts, then I would go blind very easily. They were impressed that I didn't go blind when I had it. So I was like, do I need to wear contacts? I do have dailies for like when I go to the beach or something like that, but they terrify me when I wear them. So I'm just not ready yet. Yeah. And yeah, terrible. There are so many people, like I love teaching. I would love to go and be like a nursing educator. I mean, I kind of get to do a little bit of that now, but not like really, really. But that is not worth it for that much money. Not at all. Cam said, my struggling school claimed the bulk of tuition went towards high fidelity mannequins that we never use. And you buy them once. So like, I don't buy that. Don't buy that at all. Nurse Scott says, I don't have I don't have children to be a good example for. So when I get some sweet NP money, I'm going to get a little work done. Maybe do it. For real, do it. I have nothing against other people doing it. I have weird double standards for myself. Oh, Constance Delio said, why do NP students ask to shadow physicians for no compensation? Not being snarky, I just don't get it. Because NP school, this is a huge complaint I have about NP school, is NP school expects other nurse practitioners to train students for free. Even though you are paying tuition to a professor for that, you're paying tuition for that semester, even though that clinical class you're in, literally you are learning nothing from a teacher of that school. You are learning it all from a professor or from someone that you're shadowing. So like PA school and med school give people who are teaching you in the field the money. They say, hey, you are actually doing the work of training this person. So we will give you a stipend, which also you can either give it to the person directly for saying, hey, thanks for training our next generation. We know we've just doubled your workload by you having to do your job and train someone, or they give it to the facility who then takes the money and says, thanks, we'll lower how many patients you have to see because you gave us this extra money. And then you're able to teach better. But NP school says, no, we will actually take the money. You don't have a teacher for this class. Someone's going to pop their head in and counsel you once or twice a semester. And we expect you to, the person training you to do it for free. So that's why, because the nursing education model is stupid. Stupid. Same thing for nursing school, my friends. Why are we having nurses train other nurses and not giving money to the unit so that maybe we could have less nurses, like a lower ratio so we can actually learn? But no. So no snark needed. It's stupid. And if you are training someone, you deserve to get paid for it, or your facility deserves to get paid for it so you can have less patients and you can actually teach. I taught nurse practitioners all 3 years that I worked in primary care, pretty much around the clock. I always had nurse practitioner students, and it was brutal on your schedule because it's a lot to teach. And those teachers that were getting all the money did nothing. I met with them once at the end of the semester, and they would say, hey, how'd this person do? And I would tell them. And then most of the time they disregarded it because some of the times I was like, this is not going to work well. Please don't pass them on. Please don't let them graduate. They're not ready. They literally know they haven't done it. Like, no. And they were like, and let them go. So there we are. Yeah. Hey, J. Michael. Great. New fear unlocked. Thanks. Just don't work on a GI floor that also has liver patient. Like, don't work on a liver GI kidney floor. Okay. Where you will have patients who are mean and angry and pooping themselves like crazy because they're having to take a bunch of lactulose for their liver failure. And then they throw their poop at you. Don't do that. Don't do that. Zoe Benz, oh my gosh, I would cry tears of joy if you were my professor in nursing school. I don't think you would. It sounds great on paper. I am not organized. I would be a chaotic mess, but that was very nice of you to say. Thank you. CE user said that's right. Schools should pay for placements themselves. It's all twisted. Yes. And a lot of nurse practitioner students have to not only pay for the course to their school, so they're paying thousands and thousands of dollars in tuition, but they also have to pay out of pocket again to a third-party company to find them a preceptor who then pays the preceptor. Yeah, it's sad. PhD nurse practitioner said PA and MD programs get massive government money that NP schools don't ever get. That's true. So that's also like part of it is they do get like some money from that, but like nurse practitioner schools could literally just say, hey, let's just give the money that we're taking for this course and give it to the place that is actually doing the work, but they don't want to do that. So that's where we are. And then you get a lot of people who are training nurse practitioners who will take the money when someone comes along. I get emails all the time from people being like, "Hey, we will pay you. We find clinical placements for nurse practitioners. We'll pay you X amount if you let them precept with you." And I have heard so many horror stories from a lot of you of places where you've precepted somewhere like that, where the person took the money and then literally had you sit in an office chair, like in the back doing nothing because they didn't really want to precept you. They wanted the money, and they'll sign off everything and they'll act like, "Oh, yeah, we trained you. You definitely followed along. Oh, you saw this many patients. You didn't in real life." And they'll just sign it. And yay. 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 Uh, Zoe said, if we miss clinical at my school, we have to pay $200 and do makeup clinical in a nursing home. Wow. Wow. Uh, that's crappy. Yeah. When I was in nursing school, you had to show up to clinical regardless of how sick you were, where your clinical instructor would then decide if you were sick enough to go home. I showed up one time. Now, just think about how disgusting this is from an infection control perspective. Showed up because they were like, literally, you will get kicked out. I was very young and terrified and didn't know how to stand up for myself. So I showed up with norovirus, which is like a GI bug from all angles. They literally went into the med room, found Zofran, which is an anti nausea medicine, gave me that, and were like, you'll be fine. And I stayed. How many people did I probably give that to? I don't want to think about it. It still haunts me 12 years later. But yeah, that's where we are. That's nursing school for you. So yay. Healthcare education. uh, Nurse Scott said maybe that's why they don't pay them. They want people to teach who aren't just in it for the stipend. Yeah, but then they burn you out. Like I had already told before I decided I was going to quit my job. I had already emailed the place that I precepted with like two schools and who we kind of had like a relationship with. And I had already emailed both of them and I said, I need a semester off. Like I can't do this. I can't keep doing this. And you just burn your teachers out. And I love teaching. Like I love educating. I liked having nurse practitioner students, but it was just like way too much. And the physician I worked with always took nurse practitioner students because she felt so bad for them because they could never find spots. And she was going to do the same thing. She was like, I am just so burnt out of this. And I was like, oh yeah, me too. So yeah, so I think it burns out people yeah, it's a mess. Zoe Ben said during COVID, I know so many people that had a mental conflict of like, should they go to clinical sick because they felt like they couldn't avoid the $200 fee? Yeah, that's disgusting. And I'm really sorry your school does that. That's really messed up. I would not have been able to pay a $200. Like to have to pay a fee is ridiculous. Absolutely nothing. M says, if you can afford a private nursing program at $50,000 a year, they will pass you with flying colors. And that, my friends, is the true truth. Mine wasn't private, but mine was like 50 grand. And they will pass you the more expensive the school, the more they will pass you. So I worked in Michigan. And we had a lot of like U of M, University of Michigan nursing students. And the people that walked through those doors, sometimes you were like, how are you here? And I promise you it's because mommy and daddy didn't want the phone call that their tuition money, that their student was getting kicked out of the nursing program because that would mean the end of the money versus the caliber of humans. Not all. Okay. So like, if you went to that school, okay, whatever. Some people were phenomenal that came from there, but there were a lot more people that were just skating by and definitely should not have been in the program anymore versus the community college that came in. And those people, like every single one of them were excellent because they had to fight tooth and nail to be there. Because if they got kicked out of the program, there was another person immediately to fill their spot. So yes. And and I found that very much in nurse practitioner school. I precepted two students all the time. So I worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I had one on Tuesday and one on Thursday. One of them was always from the school I was working with was incredibly expensive. It was, well, I can just say it was Georgetown. And their nurse practitioner program is bonkers expensive. The other one was a local state school. It was always Georgetown who magically passed everyone, even though I was like, this person has only, they're in their last semester of nurse practitioner school, and they have only ever done work in a clinical, in a flu clinic, giving flu shots as an NP student. And they don't know anything. And they were like, oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. They paid a lot of money for this, and out they go. Versus over here, my poor student at the state school, I'm like, yeah, like here. And the first time I like gave them like a little bit of like something they could work on, they're like, do you think we should like hold them, like not let them progress? I was like, no, I was literally just saying that like they're not at a proficient level yet, which is fine because they're not out on their own yet. Like, good Lord. So the more money, the more expensive your program is, the more likely you will just be able to skate on by. I have seen some nurses, and they come out of the programs, the expensive programs, thinking they are like, this is not everyone, okay? We're just talking in generalizations. God's gift to this earth. Like, they were like, I know everything. I know everything. You are welcome that I'm in your presence. I don't really need, you don't really have to give me feedback while I'm precepting you because I know everything. And they don't. And I'm like, how? I don't even trust you to put a Band-Aid on that baby, let alone do any, like change the chest tube dressing, like back away from the baby. And then it was the people that came out of like the people who came from, that barely got into the hospital because they're like, oh, you have your ADN. And they were in the bridge program to the BSN, and they were like running the floor. I'm like, should I follow you? Are things fine? Okay, you have it under control. Okay, great. Bye. Oh, yeah. So my Fletcher says no. Oh, I won't mention my U of M degree. I'm sure it's fine. There were some phenomenal people that came out of that program. I'm just saying, in general, my preference was for the 2 community colleges in the area. I would rather work with those nursing students or those new grads, and then Michigan State. I went to Michigan State, but I mean, we're cheaper, so we're probably more. Michigan State actually did fail people, so probably shouldn't say that. But I'm sure they failed less than the community college, and then U of M, if I had to. My sister, Eastern Michigan University. I don't know who out there needs to hear this, but don't go to Eastern Michigan University's nursing school program. It's awful. It's just awful. So that's that. All right, friends. Well, thanks for coming and chatting. Sorry, that was a last minute topic change. I have to go to bed. I was going to say I was going to go play my game, but I have to go be a responsible adult and go to bed because my children don't sleep at night. They're going to wake up in about 2 hours and start screaming and coughing and struggling for a long time, and I won't sleep. Also disclaimer, because my sister's texting me, Eastern Michigan University, great for many other things. My husband went there. My sister went there. Phenomenal other things, just their nursing program, horrible. Absolutely awful. It does. It does. Ypsilanti is where Eastern Michigan University is. It's spelled like this. It's very fun. Ypsilanti. And they have a huge water tower that is very, it's very appropriate for a college campus. And I'm sure they have a lot of fun with it. But anyway, thanks for being here, friends. If you want to hear the update about the Minnesota Nursing Association thing, let me know. And if there's other people who seem interested, I will put up a quick video about it. We'll follow this one and kind of see where it leads. We'll see where it leads. Remember that your nursing license is the most powerful thing that you have in terms of your job. So please hold it tight. Do whatever you need to do to protect it. There are lots of jobs out there. And if yours fires you because you are being safe, it's probably time to go anyway. So just remember that. Remember that you are not alone. You are more than enough. And you, my friends, can do hard things. And I will see you next time. Bye.